Hi, Jason Lisk with PoolGenius, here with a one and done topic that I think a lot of people will grapple with this year. Where do you pick Scottie Scheffler to win? Where do you pick Scottie Scheffler in your one and done pool? You can only use him once, so you got to be intentional about how you want to use him. Best golfer in the world. We saw him win 5 tournaments last year. And so you could have got a win at any of 5 spots, but there were a lot of other key spots where you would have picked him and not gotten that win. And, it's all about kind of getting lucky and time in the market. But where should you consider using Scottie Scheffler? Before we do that, though, let's hear real quick about why you should consider using our products for one and done pools. Golf one and done pools are back in 2026. And if you want a real edge, you need more than Rory looks good this week. The winners plan the whole season. Here's how. The PoolGenius One and Done product does the work for you with pick grades, golfer rankings, ownership rankings, course stats, and season-long planning. So stop the guessing. Start playing with an edge. Golf One and Done pools start up in January of 2026. So go to poolgenius.com/golf. Don't miss the cut. Okay, we're back, and let's get to where we want to consider Scottie Scheffler. I'm going to put up for you a graphic, and this graphic's going to show you the last 5 years, Scottie Scheffler's strokes gained average at the biggest money events on the PGA Tour this year, and how he's done, how many rounds he's played, what his strokes gained average is across that group. So let's take a look here. I've organized it's in descending order of total strokes gained. So if he's played more rounds at a place and he's played better, he's going to show up higher on the list. Masters is number 1 because he's played a full 20 rounds at the Masters in the last 5 years. One last tournament at the Memorial, higher strokes gained average, very close. And you can see third on that list, U.S. Open. Played there and made the cut all 5 years. Up there in strokes gained. The one event he hasn't won, the one major he hasn't won yet, but he has a second place. Then comes the BMW Championship and the PGA Championship, which he won last year. He actually won, and he won both of those last year, I should say. And then the Open Championship, the major he won last year to win his first Open, makes the list. And then we have the Arnold Palmer, which he did not play 1 year. And so he's got, though, you can see his third highest strokes gained average at the Arnold Palmer, even though that was the one he did not win last year. He's won it in the past. He's played really well there. And so that one makes the list. The Players Championship, which he's won multiple times. Then we get down to the Travelers. He's also won that. Sound like a broken record. The ones he hasn't won, we already mentioned the U.S. Open. Genesis and FedEx St. Jude. His best finish is a third place at both of those in the last 5 years. He's won the RBC Heritage, but not played it every year, so it ranks down the list. And he's only played Pebble twice and not won that, with a 6th place finish as his best finish in 2 starts there. So these are the signature events, the majors, the playoff events, everything worth over $3 million to the winner in this year on the PGA Tour. And you can see lots of good results. We're going to get into these. So honestly, part of the answer to the question, and we'll talk about it here in a bit, of where do I use Scottie Scheffler is, at most places, right? But we can only use them once. He has a 3.0 strokes gained or better average over a 5-year period at 7 of these 13 events. To demonstrate how ridiculous that is, that's also what his power rating or his strokes gained rating is in our ratings entering this year, making him number 1. Among the tour players, so we're excluding live golfers who we have less data on. Among the tour players, the next 2 are Fleetwood and Rory McIlroy, coming off of last year, and they're right around 2.1 to 2.0 strokes gained on the field. The fact that he in over half the events is that high is just amazing, because Rory, across the signature events, majors, etc., there's only 2 events that he has that number on average over a 5-year period. That's the US Open, and that's the Truist or Wells Fargo. And so Rory's just out in front of the entire field. You could take the next top 10 golfers, and they combined, I don't think, would have that many events where they had averaged, if they had played, at least 4 years there, had averaged above a 3.0 strokes gained. So he's dominant everywhere. Now, where shouldn't you play him? Scottie has played well, very well at the Phoenix Open, has played it every year he can over the last 5. It used to be a signature event. He's won there when it was both a signature event and a non-signature event. He won there. It was kind of like one of his first big wins in his breakout year, early in the year, a few years back. So he always plays Phoenix, and he does well there. It's a really good course for him. The problem is the Phoenix Open is worth less than half of a lot of these other events. So that's an example. He's also played the Charles Schwab Challenge every year. It's in his home state of Texas, in his home, the Metroplex area of Dallas-Fort Worth. He's also played the Byron Nelson, which is in the same area, 4 of the 5 years, including last year when he won it. And he's played the American Express early in the season every year except last year when he had the hand injury and was not playing yet. So those are events that he plays regularly. He's also played the Houston Open at times. He's played the Scottish Open a few times before the Open. But none of those events are worth as much money. And so I bring all those up to say he's played really well at a lot of those as well. The problem is, if Scottie Scheffler is going to win multiple tournaments, even if you pick him and he wins one of those events, you did decently well, probably an above average result, but you don't cash in one and done pools by just getting a merely above average result out of some of the best golfers. You have to hit with big winners with them, and you have to really, if you think about it, you're going to lose ground to anybody that picked Scottie last year at the Memorial, at the PGA, at the Open, or at the BMW. If you successfully picked him at the Byron Nelson, you lost large amounts of money to the field. And so the basic pick advice is use him on the biggest events, and that's why we focused on that with this graphic. Now, 2 he hasn't played. He's not played the Truist, which used to be the Wells Fargo. Last year it was not at Quail Hollow. It's traditionally at Quail Hollow. Last year the PGA was at Quail Hollow, and he won there when it was the PGA Championship. So maybe he'll choose to play it for the first time this year, because he does have a win at that course. And of course we have the new event, the event at Doral in Miami area, the Cadillac Championship, which is new. I would suspect if he's going to not play any event, it's going to be one of those 2 this year of the signatures. Scottie's won enough money. He's going to be high enough on the points. He doesn't have to play every single one. And the schedule sets up to go Cadillac Championship, Truist, PGA Championship in 3 consecutive weeks in early May. And he may choose to sit one of them. I don't think he'll sit both out. So he'll probably add at least one of those events onto his schedule this year, but they're events he doesn't really have history in. Now, that said, he's going to play well everywhere. So that's a rundown of the events. I'm going to rank my order at the end of the show. First, I want to bring up I still call it a tweet, message on X from Rick Rungood showing the pick rates on Scottie Scheffler in 2025 relative to the events he won and did not win. There was a big pool there. Rick Rungood again this year, but last year had a pool with well over 3,000 entrants. This shows where Scottie was used the most and the least. And so I want to take a quick look at this and just talk about pick popularity. Because one thing we got to think about with one and done is obviously where do we want to use a golfer to win, but also where do we want to use a golfer to gain leverage on the field? The first part's most important, right? The win. Like you pick Scotty in a week he wins, and you're better off for it. Like, and if you pick him and he doesn't win that week, well, your entry's a little behind now, right? You got to find winners elsewhere. And if he eats up more of the wins, you've got to, it restricts some of the big events where you could find winners. So hitting on the win itself, is the main key. But certainly if you can miss picking him in events where he's popular but doesn't win, and hit on an event where he wins but is a little less popular, you can create some leverage in the pool, increase the value of that win for you. And so what we see when we look at what Rick showed is last year, at least, there wasn't much correlation at all between where Scotty won and how frequently he was picked in one and done pools. He was most popular actually at the Arnold Palmer. It was one of those events we looked at. Really good course history, had won it in the past. He had won the Players twice in a row, and so that was the second most popular. And then the third most popular was the event he won. And you actually saw this one show up on a lot of winning one and done entries, was picking Scotty at the Memorial successfully. And he was picked 13% of the time there. And a lot of the leading entries did have Scotty at the Memorial, more so than they had him at less popular events like the PGA Championship and the Open. And so what we can see is, there were 5 events where he was above 9%. Now, because he is such a good golfer and people are going to spread him out and pick him at a variety of different places, he's never really going to be like super, super chalky, right? We see 18% was the most he was used in the event last year. And really you're going to see it cluster a lot more around that 9 to 10% range, 5 to 20 at most at a lot of events. And so, but what we see is, the PGA, 5%. The Open, under 1% used him there. 1% did use him at the CJ Cup, and we see that about 1% used him at each of those non-signature events, the Houston Open, the Charles Schwab Challenge, the Scottish was even lower than that. And so, and 2% used him at the BMW. So not really a lot of correlation between how people picked and how Scotty did. And so I think you got to keep that in mind and how you want to play it. I'm going to talk through this video, but the season will play out, and how it plays out for your entry may dictate how you want to use Scottie Scheffler as the season goes on, based on what else you do. Like if you hit early winners elsewhere and are in good shape, you may decide to fire him one way. And if you are trailing, if you are trying to be more unique, if you missed out on some of the big picks that hit through the early part of the spring, maybe you want to figure out where to use him in a more unique spot. So let's get to where I would rank using Scottie Scheffler. And I'm going to prioritize what we talked about. Where has he played well? Well, pretty much everywhere. But there are a few spots where he's played even better. Where has he been picked most heavily and least heavily? And which of those are probably somewhat predictable in how people will peg? So thinking about leverage and thinking about how much the tournament is worth. Because if we think about the hierarchy of tournaments, all these events are worth at least $3 million, but there is kind of a hierarchy. The Players Championship has the biggest prize purse, has the largest first place prize at $4.5 million. The U.S. Open and Masters actually moved above $4 million. And what they call the player-hosted events, the Genesis, the Arnold Palmer, and the Memorial with Jack Nicklaus, those 3 have a $4 million prize purse. So those 6 combined are all between $4 and $4.5 million. They are your largest. And then you have the others checking in at 3.6 or just below. So where would I rank it? I'm going to go in reverse order. Here's who I would probably least likely use Scottie Scheffler at. 1, all the non-signature events. We talked about it. I don't care if the pick rate's low. 1%. Let 1% of the people siphon off picking Scottie Scheffler. Fine with me. Maybe they'll hit winners. He's very live to win any event. But, I'm not just facing them. If I was in a heads up, it'd be different. But in a pool with a lot of people, I've got to save it. So that would be bottom of my list. The only exception I could craft there as if I were playing in a segment pool. I hadn't used Scottie yet, and it was the end of the segment, and I was at the top. And so using Scottie gave me like the highest odds to cash that segment prize in first place. That's a very specific subset of rules I would consider. But that's about it on picking a non-signature event. Where else wouldn't I use them? Coincidentally, probably not the Open. I know he just won there, and he was unpopular there. It is the lowest prize purse event. So if he wins any of all of these, I know it has a lot of prestige, winning the Claret Jug, but it is the lowest. It has been the lowest prize purse, relatively speaking. So the difference between winning the Open and picking a winner at one of the top 6, we talked about at 4 million or higher, could be the equivalent of like having to get an extra top 5 finish, top 3 finish out of somebody over the course of the year. So it does matter. So probably not the Open coming off his win last year, especially if that popularity is going to tick up a little bit because he won there. Pebble, he hasn't played his best at Pebble. He's played a limited number of rounds there. It's early in the season, and it's worth 3.6. All those factors add up that it's the first signature event out of the gate. I'm probably saving him and not using him at Pebble Beach. He's not going to be that popular there, I don't think. And so a win that you didn't pick isn't going to kill you right away. You're going to have a lot of other events out there to hit a winner on. And so I'm probably staying off Pebble. The Truist we talked about. Hasn't played it. May not play it again. Same with the Cadillac. New event. I'm unlikely, since they're not worth the $4 million, I'll probably like good. Those are the ones where I would have to have a lot of entries in play before I got down to those events and using one of them on Scottie. And so then we get to the next tier. So here's who I would pick in the next tier. This is the tier where still probably not prioritizing these unless they have a lot of entries. Travelers. It's right after the U.S. Open. Plenty of players. It's a shorter course. I think you can find guys that play well at the Travelers and can finish well there. And so that's probably one I'm less likely to pick him at. Same with RBC Heritage the week after the Masters. I know he's won it, but that's another shorter course that has some course-specific elements that you can find some guys to play as alternatives. And you know what? If you can hit a golfer that does reasonably well at the Heritage, and let's say Scottie wins it, I think you're still in good shape. Next year comes the St. Jude and BMW, and I probably put he won the BMW last year. He's never won the St. Jude. That's a case where if you still have them as you approach the Open, I'm saving them for those two instead. I know plenty of people used him at the BMW and got into the money or moved up the money list with that hit. So those are good spots because they come late when he's not likely to be super popular and does have some leverage. But again, they're not worth quite as much. And that gets me to my top 6. Number 6 would be Arnold Palmer. It's early in the year. We saw last year it was most popular spot. He's played really well there. Because it's early, I think you're catching people who are eager to pick him. And I'm probably willing to hold still. I'll probably sprinkle a Scottie if I have way more than 6 entries, if I have double-digit entries, which I should by that point. But it's not going to be like a heavy pick. It's going to be where I'm saving mostly Scottie for later. So Arnold would be 6. Now, this one actually comes before, and I'm putting it ahead. Because if I'm picking between the two, I'm actually using him with the Genesis more. He hasn't won there, so he doesn't have that course history yet. But we know Scottie's so good. It's just a matter of time. And there's plenty of guys that where playing well at the Masters translates to playing well at the Genesis, the Riviera. And last year's event was not there. It had to be moved to Torrey Pines, but it'll be back at Riviera. And so Scottie hasn't had a top finish there at Riviera yet. But you know what? That may just mean leverage in terms of an under 5% popularity rate. And so I might be willing to dabble in the Genesis with a few as my 5th choice. But it's a clear 5th behind the top 4. My top four are the Masters, where he's won, where the presence of the live golfers kind of holds his popularity down, where he has a great course history. He's a threat to win every year at the Masters. Great course for him. Got to be the odds leader in all these events. Masters is up there. Players Championship. Bigger field than other signature events and type events that are non-majors, but the biggest prize purse. And he's won there twice in a row until last year, until Rory won it last year. So it's always a threat. Then my top two. And these two come later in the schedule after the midway point, right after Labor Day. I think it's the Memorial and the U.S. Open. And I think what you can do with this is you can play it depending on your standings. He's not going to be popular at the U.S. Open. He's not won there. He was about 5% last year, and he's probably not going to be significantly higher than that this year in a one and done. So you're getting a popularity discount at the U.S. Open. He has great strokes gained numbers there. It's at the U.S. Open type courses. Difficult course plays to Scottie's strength relative to other golfers. So I think it's a matter of time before he wins the U.S. Open. And because of the bigger field compared to the Memorial, and because of, again, the presence of the live golfers like Bryson and Rahm that can draw more picks, his popularity is down. And plus, he's been used a lot by then. So just by natural attrition. Now, the opposite is the Memorial. I think it's going to be his most popular event this year. But it comes late enough in the process, you can let your place in the standings dictate how you play that. If you've scored pretty well with non-Scheffler picks, going into the Memorial, you're near the top, I think the Memorial might be where you want to play him. Because if you can cover 15 to 20% of the pool, and if Scottie wins, you stay ahead of all of those and move up significantly against everybody else. I think that's an attractive way to play it. So Memorial, U.S. Open are my top two for 2026, but I'm willing to play him additional entries at the Players, the Masters, and also maybe at the Genesis and Arnold Palmer. So that's how I'm thinking about it for 26. Let me know where you want to play Scottie, where you think he's going to win, where his chances are highest in the comments, and good luck with your Scottie Scheffler picks in 2026.